Oh, just to let you know, Alan, Sam did a great dangerous demo. So we have, as part of TAD Summit, we just pick on people and say, can you show a demo? So Sam showed the integration between sort of Watson and the stuff that you've been doing with Nexmo, and did a really cute little hack. So I think it really demonstrated the power of the gateway you've created between basically all the AI and SIP sessions. So that was really cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I actually just got an email from the president of Watson just about an hour ago, which sending along sort of the latest press release. There's a lot of excitement about it here.
Yep, cool. Sent you some props there, Sam. Excellent. Okay, so let's get things kicked off. So as I mentioned, we've got Alan Masarek. He is remote from Jersey. Then we've got Thomas, New Jersey. Sorry, yes, got to say New Jersey. Jersey. I know, I never picked up the Jersey accent, even though I've been there for 15 years. We have Thomas here in person. So what we're going to do is we're going to let Alan introduce himself, introduce Vonage. We have a slide up that basically explains their view in terms of how Vonage Nexmo fits together and the value they're going to create together. We're going to run through some questions, and then we'll open it to the audience. Okay? Alan, over to you.
Alan, thank you very much. Nice to be with everybody. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. I hope to have a sort of an interesting, interactive discussion. I know that we're on the tail end of a 2-day meeting in between you and sort of afternoon cocktails. So let's jump right in. What I wanted to describe in this one slide is to give you as quick a picture as I can of how Vonage has sort of progressed itself into the broader business communications space, culminating most recently in the acquisition of Nexmo. And just a pretty straightforward slide where you're reading left to right. And many of you hopefully are familiar with Vonage's residential roots, sort of as the, if you will, sort of almost the inventor of the consumer or residential VoIP business some 16 years ago. When I got involved, and I joined from Google 2 years ago, the opportunity that we saw was how to take the assets from the consumer side and leverage those to move aggressively into the business side. And we've been very active with acquisitions over the course of really the last 3 years. One of the acquisitions predate my tenure as CEO, such that Vonage as a business communications company in 2017, it'll be the larger of the two segments. So it will surpass residential next year. So starting again on the left of this slide, the assets that we have are, it starts with the brand. The Vonage brand is extraordinarily well known, obviously initially in the residential space around VoIP, but we've moved it very aggressively into the business market, and just empirically, we have very, very high awareness levels in that brand. And it's the classic idea of it's easier to reposition a brand than to create a brand new one. So about $2 billion in advertising spending, mostly national television spending, went into building that brand. So you have extraordinarily high levels of awareness, principally in North America, but extending also to Europe and to some extent in Asia as well. The next asset is the cash flow of the consumer business. The residential business is your classic long tail consumer subscription business where customers do churn away. It is shrinking, but they do that in a relatively slow pace. So this business is very, very profitable. Matter of fact, we just spoke about at our last earnings call that the cash flows of Vonage exceed in aggregate those of the our six closest pure play competitors in both the UCaaS market and the CPaaS market. And then finally, the network side. Again, because of the consumer business, which still terminates some 15 billion minutes of calls worldwide annually, we have this highly scaled network that from which gives us direct peering relationships with carriers and very inexpensive termination contracts with carriers throughout the world. So we took those assets of the brand, the cash flows, and the network and used that in order to jumpstart our move into the business side. In the pyramid slide, what we're trying to show very simply is our approach has been to serve from the bottom of the pyramid, the SMB space, up to the large enterprise. We've chosen to come at this with two purpose-built solutions. Vonage Essential is more mid-market and down, which is our proprietary solution, and Vonage Premier, which is more mid-market and up, which the call processing stack there is built around BroadSoft. And we've done 4 acquisitions to build sort of, if you will, the elements of that pyramid. And our whole approach has simply been that we don't want to sell the 5-line customer the same solution we sell the 5,000-line customer. Not only are the features wildly different, but also the level of management over the top versus fully managed across our MPLS network are very different. And then also elements of the whole buyer journey. When you sell down market, it has to be almost touchless. You can't afford an intensive service delivery with very small customers like what is necessary when you deal with much larger, more complex customers. So that's the approach we've taken to the market. Now, if you go over to this very simple graphic on the far right, which we refer to as the business communications value chain, what we've done is we've taken the UCaaS element in the middle, which is really those 4 acquisitions, Vocalocity, Telesphere, Simple Signal, and iCore in that middle box. And we think of that as the center of the value chain. So what UCaaS is running around doing is, if you will, cloudifying the PBX, as we all know. Adding to, and again, as we all know, it's a pretty straightforward ROI sale to move the on-prem to the cloud. You move CapEx to OpEx, and those operating expenses are lower, and you have more scalability of the cloud-based system. What we've done is we've now added the integrations to the left, which is to the workflow tools. And that was another acquisition that we did, a company named gUnify, and the G in gUnify stood for Google, and it's a company that I knew from my Google days. And what it is it's architected in a way so that we have an integration layer between our communication stacks and the other non-communication oriented workflow tools, mostly around productivity and CRM. So think, a given company may be an Office 365 shop or Google for Work. They may use Salesforce or Sugar or Dynamics. They might use NetSuite or Zendesk. And particularly within the CRM space, there are just dozens of different vertical CRMs that attack various vertical industry segments. So through gUnify, we have very tight integration of the UCaaS into those other cloud-based workflow tools. Now let's go to the right-hand side in the Nexmo story. It was our view that part of the value chain you had to connect to was how those business customers connect with their customers. So if you think about what Nexmo has done for many years, it has enabled cloud communication functionality, voice, SMS, two-factor authentication, etc., several different products. And those have been embedded into the customer-facing websites or mobile apps or business process apps of business customers. So we're here in the early days of this market, which on the Nexmo side we refer to as CPaaS. But the way we thought about it is that these are really not different industries at all. They're just simply different delivery models of the same cloud communications functionality. So in the UCaaS model, it's just communications flavor of a SaaS model where we're providing, if you will, the entire package on a prepackaged basis that we host in a multi-tenanted cloud solution. While in the CPaaS side, we're just taking the same cloud communications functionality and chunking it down into its sort of, if you will, component APIs so that the developer community can consume it in those programmable modules and build it in however which way that they want. In our view, while the market has started where CPaaS is focused sort of only on customer communications and UCaaS only on intra-company or employee communications, we think that's temporary. We think that these are simply opposite sides of the same coin. They're just different delivery models of the same cloud communications functionality. The scale that we have assembled in UCaaS right this minute, we're the second largest in revenue in the world. And in CPaaS, on the Nexmo side, they are as well second largest in the world behind Twilio. Putting those together, we now build the largest, immediately, we're already there now, cloud communications company with very high organic rates of growth. And we believe a product offering by virtue of going this whole value chain, which is much more compelling than those who are just providing a piece of it, just providing the, employee-based, bringing the PBX to the cloud, or the customer communications on the CPaaS side. So this is the approach that we've taken. It's resonated extraordinarily well with our customers. And if you sort of simplify it in a way, we're taking the programmability of Nexmo and we're marrying it already with that industrial strength network that is Vonage. 15 billion minutes of calls a year, direct peering relationships with the carriers. We own our own phone numbers. We've got low price termination contracts with carriers through the world because of that volume. And you now take, again, the programmability and marry it with the industrial strength network, and you can deliver ultimately higher quality and we believe lower cost solutions. So that's the approach that we're taking. I want to sort of stop there. That's kind of a setup. Thomas is here in person, and we're delighted to have an opportunity to spend time with you today, and we'll take your questions.
That was excellent. Thanks a lot, Alan. I'm just putting you on full screen here, so just bear with me for a sec. There you go. Perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to ask, why are we getting the echo?
Because I think
just hang a sec. You got it? Perfect. Excellent. So you should be able to hear us, okay, Alan, yeah? Okay. So
no echo on my side.
Perfect. Great. So we've got a few people that are actually very keen to ask questions. So what I suggest is we let the audience get their questions out. So Moshe, did you have a question? Yes. I'll hand over straight because he's just going to bother me until I let him speak.
Good morning. So basically what I understand from your presentation that you see the consumer side just as a building block now to go to the business model. And I'm wondering if your intention is to divest the consumer or you see some way of really improving and giving added value to your consumer customers.
So the consumer business for us is not the focus of the company. The focus of Vonage is around business communications. We don't have any intention of divesting the consumer side because the assets of the consumer side are really important to our ability to transform into business. So we want to hold on to that brand. If I divested it, somebody else would take my brand. That would not be acceptable. We have that network, which gives us those peering relationships. I don't want to lose those by transferring it elsewhere. It's very, very profitable for us, and it enables us to build the balance sheet, if you will. That's enabled us to do these acquisitions, and it's the ongoing cash flow that has enabled us to grow the business side so quickly. Now, and we continue to add customers in consumer every quarter. We added last quarter alone 57,000 new subscribers, but we lose more than that. So it is in a slow, steady decline, but the focus is on the business side. I tell people often when I'm at conferences and our booth says Vonage Business, we're sitting down at a conference table and I'll look them up, I'll point them up and I'll say, see where it says Vonage Business? 2 years from now, it won't say business. It'll simply say Vonage because Vonage will mean business. What you're sort of experiencing right now is sort of mid-transformation. Remember, we went from zero in business 3 years ago, to now in 2017, it'll be the larger of the two segments.
Okay, I'll hand over to Dean.
Hi, Alan. This is Dean Bubley from Disruptive Analysis. I got a question, which is, I struggle a little bit to see the opportunity for cross-sell here. The people who are buying UCaaS and hosted PBX services aren't necessarily the developers who are creating the next, I don't know, mobile or social or retail app with embedded communications capabilities. They might have a UC system, they might not. Where's other than the termination and peering relationships and maybe brand, what's the link between the two?
Great question. There is linkage right now, and we believe that linkage is going to accelerate quickly and very meaningfully. So you're right when you think about UCaaS has been sold, sort of the metaphor I like to use is you sort of knock on the front door of the business selling UCaaS. You're talking to the head of IT, you're speaking to the CFO's office, et cetera, selling in this new system. Because it's a fully prepackaged solution. And a lot of the activity in CPaaS has been more pulled by the developer community who go to our website to pull down the API. But what you're seeing is a convergence of that. So within our enterprise pipeline, so we sell small companies, SMB, all the way up to very large enterprise. Within our enterprise pipeline, fully 1/3 of our enterprise pipeline of customer prospects are using CPaaS right this minute. And there's a large percentage who have indicated that they'll likely be using CPaaS in the future. We're already seeing that those large companies want it, even if we, I mean, here in the early days where Nexmo is less integrated with UCaaS than it will be, and we only bought it 5 months ago, so all that work's underway. You're already seeing the customers who want to deal with a single vendor. And over in the future, where it's actually more formally integrated with one another, we think that we'll see even more pull-through. Another way to think about it also is one of the advantages of Vonage as a force multiplier, if you will, for Nexmo, is that Vonage has got 80,000 business customers. We add 10,000 logos a quarter. There are 365 salespeople across several channels in Vonage Business calling and selling on those customers. The opportunity for lead sharing in there is just massive and immediate. So this whole sort of artificial separation where to think CPaaS is only pulled by developers and UCaaS is only sold through the front door, and those buying decisions are completely separate, those are going to fade extraordinarily quickly, in my view.
And also remember that even like the really small businesses, who don't have developers, actually those guys, tend to use ISVs, to do their business. Your dentist practice will have a appointment system. It's much easier for those ISVs to integrate better, with communication, if they can actually do it on top of a CPaaS APIs, yeah. So that when they chase you for your appointment, send you an SMS, and when you call back in, the call back in from the customer is tightly coupled to the original SMS that was sent. And the secretary, when she picks up, she knows, oh yeah, it's you, and you're calling back because of the SMS. Yeah? So the ISV element as well is pretty important.
Yeah, and I think that this morning Shifraz gave a great presentation where he was explaining their proposition. They're a operator in Sri Lanka that have actually one of the world's leading API offers, and very much enterprise is a key focus from both the traditional telco, where you're delivering, as you said, a SaaS offer, but also being able to deliver it as a PaaS offer through an API. So I like that analogy. That was good.
Just one more thing. What's also interesting is that also Vonage themselves starting to use Nexmo APIs to build new products faster, fully packaged SaaS products that they can actually deploy fast to their customer base.
Okay, that makes more sense. If I look at the acquisitions of CPaaS vendors, it's often been for internal use by a product shop. I'm thinking of Request-Tech getting bought by Blackbird, I think, for educational things. I'm wondering if the missing piece of the puzzle here isn't a large-scale modern cloud contact center offer between the UCaaS proposition and the CPaaS, if it's customer and end user focused. Is there sort of a missing piece of the portfolio around cloud contact center?
I think the first at the bottom end, is going to make it very easy potentially to create those offerings, but also at the higher end is going to make it easy to extend the current Vonage business proposition with the other contact center proposition using the CPaaS API, and really enabling the customer workflows and all the employee kind of workforce management workflows to be better coupled together. And also, by the way, the interesting aspect I think is UCaaS is still very much focused on PSTN, whereas the Nexmo focus is slightly broader. It's voice PSTN, SMS, and also we're already doing in-app communication as well, and tapping into the chat APIs, like Facebook, etc. So it's also opening up that avenue.
Thomas, one other comment I think is interesting. If you go back to that slide, I don't know if it's still up on the screen, in that business communications value chain, the industry has been, got it up? The industry, we've been talking about, there used to be a term, communications-enabled business process, which was just this little 3-box value chain. That's all it was. So for 10 years, we've been calling it communication-enabled business process. So the vision of bringing this together is not so novel. It's been around for a long time. But infrastructurally, you couldn't bring it together because think of the workflow tools many years ago were client-based or prem-based. The communication systems we had were proprietary landline cell networks that obviously didn't speak to one another. And without having things in the cloud, you couldn't have this robust API community in order to create companies like Nexmo. Now that you have it all normalized by the communication by IP, and it's sitting up in the cloud, the integration of the piece parts is actually fairly trivial. And so you get to a place, I always cite the example of booking a flight online. We've all experienced the frustrations. I was with the Nexmo folks in our offices in Asia, in Singapore and in Hong Kong last week. And so if I'm online trying to book a flight from Singapore to Hong Kong, and I have a problem, what do we do today? We pick up the phone and we call that airline's toll-free number, and we have to completely reintroduce ourselves because it's lost all context. What if, by virtue of embedding click-to-call functionality within their web store, if I'm 15 minutes into my session trying to book that flight between Singapore and Hong Kong, and I have a problem, and I hit click to call, it routes through the IVRs in the UCaaS system so that the agent picks the phone up and says, "Hi, Mr. Masarek, I see you're trying to book a flight from Singapore to Hong Kong next Thursday. How can I help?" It's an opportunity to create the personalization that gets lost as we move to these digital business models. And now that it's fairly straightforward to integrate them because it's IP-based and cloud-based, you're going to see this happen very, very rapidly. And so that's the vision of this that we see.
Bayan Tofik, CEO of FlowRoute. So we believe that there's a tremendous amount of potential in the CPaaS space that is just beginning to emerge. that there are a tremendous amount of use cases where developers will want to integrate into communications, both for customers and also in internal applications. But one of the trends that we've started to notice is that much of the market may not be consuming communications in the coming years through a horizontal UCaaS offering or even through a CPaaS offering. And an example of that is exactly what you were talking about, the dental offices. We think that we've seen and we have customers that are vertically oriented SaaS companies that are creating solutions that they're not marketing as a UCaaS offering at all or a communication platform, but it's a holistic platform that integrates patient management and calendaring and reminders and notifications, and also happens to replace the phone system that the dental office has. And it seems to us that these vertically oriented SaaS companies are in a much better position to capture those markets than a broad UCaaS offering. And a dental office isn't going to hire a developer and say, build me a CPaaS application to give my patients a better customer experience. So how does Vonage's strategy in this translate to this emergence of vertically oriented SaaS companies where communication is strategic?
I mean, one way to look at it, the G-Unify piece here, the workflow piece, it's in effect, an engine that enables us to integrate with CRM productivity packages, in a fairly rapid manner. Yeah. So that's kind of the integration room, if you wish, of the group. So they've developed an expertise in that space to actually do exactly this. And they go into HR, legal, or more like generic CRM, and keeping on expanding, to tap into those markets.
Let me make a comment. So I hope I understand your question correctly, but the broader, so I'll say sort of 2 points. The broad Workstream messaging or Workstream collaboration space, whether it's Slack or Teams or Workspaces or HipChat. I mean, I was just at BroadSoft Connections yesterday, and they've come up with, Team One, and RingCentral bought Glip. I mean, there's just a tremendous amount of activity in the Workstream space. So obviously, what Microsoft has in Office 365. The point is will they add to that homepage, if you will, the various voice functionality? I think the answer is yes, as will Salesforce and others. But it's how they're going to do that, I think, is going to be much more with the lightweight CPaaS tools, because they're not going to want to build the stacks into their other solutions. That's one. The other side is, if you go back up to my pyramid slide, CPaaS is actually, unlike UCaaS, CPaaS seems to be penetrating from the top down. UCaaS disrupted from the bottom up. And that's because you need developers. And that's why larger companies have those developers and they can incorporate the CPaaS. But where it's different, use your dentist example. The dentist certainly has no developers. They're not going to do it. But the dentist uses a dental practice management system. That ISV is certainly going to incorporate communications functionality. So when they send you the text message or the TTS call or what have you that says you're late for a cleaning or your appointment is next Tuesday, that you can contextually respond back, and that it goes directly into the dental practice management system in this instance, so that you're not just then saying, oh, I got the message, and I pick up the phone and call like any other third party to speak to the receptionist. It's analogous to when I'm on the website trying to book the flight, and I have a problem and I call their toll-free number. So I think it is what's happening in the world today is clearly disrupting the old way of delivering communications functionality. I think it's going to spawn opportunity. It'll create challenges for certain models, but it'll spawn opportunity for, in our view, for the piece parts that we've put together.
That makes sense. So what we've seen over the last couple of years in our business are a number of companies that are not ISVs, that are vertically oriented SaaS companies that come in and focus on a specific, for example, dental vertical or pharmacies or so on, and they develop integrations with the 12 types of patient management software that exists in the dental industry, or the 32 types in the pharmacy space for independent pharmacies, and they're replacing the entire communication system because the dentist also wants to simplify their bill, simplify how they communicate, and so on. And because communication is strategic to their offering, they tend to operate their own communication platforms. They're not operating on top of a CPaaS platform. They're operating their own communication platform and consuming and managing infrastructure, perhaps with APIs, but they're not using the CPaaS building blocks. And we've seen several examples of that.
And I guess maybe there might be a stage where maybe some of the more legacy ISVs in that space, will start reacting. Maybe the guys who actually want to, abstract, the 12 ISVs, maybe they realize actually their core value prop, is really this abstraction, and they should maybe really focus on that. And the question is, should they still carry on doing, the communication bit, by themselves, or actually go and, get someone like Nexmo, to do it?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. Are there any more questions from the audience? Maybe one, I'll ask a cheeky one. We've got the UCAS islands of Microsoft and Cisco. How do you compete with those islands?
I actually think that Microsoft, Cisco, the carriers will be very formidable competition in the future. You think about some of the advantages, or you think about many of the players who we all know about, all the names in the space today. They are not large companies unto themselves, and they're most of the pure plays that we compete against today are effectively non-branded. They have brands certainly, but their awareness level is very low. They're not profitable or particularly profitable companies, and they're just not that large. We're about $1 billion in revenue with the scale advantages that I mentioned before about our brand and our cash flows and our network. Those, we believe, position us very well against current competition. As the big players increasingly get it right, and obviously we'd all say it's early days, that I think they'll be more formidable out 2, 3, 4 years from now, and that's something that we need to be concerned about. Now, that time period, call it 2020 as a round number, in the business side, we'll have substantially greater scale if we never did another acquisition, just simply based upon the trajectory of our organic growth. And so, while we certainly won't be the scale of the companies that you've mentioned, we will have very substantial scale, a ever more substantial brand in our space. In terms of customers, we're adding 10,000 logos a quarter. Again, that is not insignificant by any stretch. And then most importantly, I think what we've built or are building, integrating CPaaS, is something that will withstand the test of time relative to, if you will, the big boys coming in, because we're doing this at scale that others aren't doing. And so I think that we have an opportunity to continue to be a leader in this space, that kind of irrespective of what the competition does or gets better at in the out years.
Yep. Okay, that's clear. Any other questions? We're coming up on time, so this is your last opportunity. It's a very rare occurrence to be able to get these one-on-ones with CEOs of, I'm going to call you a telco, even though you're not a telco, because you've got a big network. And
we're a software company.
A new generation telco.
That's it, new generation telco. If not, let's show our appreciation. Dean, do you have one? I saw your hand raising. Go on.
One more. mobile strategy. Are you driven by what Broadsoft is doing, or is there anything that you can add in terms of your own sort of R&D and product development?
Yes, well, our mobile strategy is we will increasingly be a mobile-first company. And we all know that, essentially, I'm a mobile guy by background. I built the company over a bunch of years. That's how I got to Google. I sold it to Google in 2012. We all know in our industry, we started from a landline orientation, and then we went a mobile augmentation path. So how do we mobilize what that landline was? We cannot be, in my view, in a mobile augmentation space or mindset. We need to be in a mobile first mindset. And I actually think there is a step even beyond that, which is it's not really mobile first. It's being completely device agnostic. It simply says, I provide a cloud-based service. The piece of hardware that I choose to query my service from is irrelevant. And it's, the people in this room, based upon your own personal preferences or situational, am I walking outside, am I sitting at my desk, or access to various, bandwidth alternatives, will dictate which piece of hardware I choose to query this cloud service with. So that's the mindset we have to have. And that's what we're doing today in terms of moving ourselves so that we can be mobile first. So you can have a purely mobile solution. You can be divorced fully from the landline world. We all know millennials don't think the landline first. They think mobile many times, not just first, but only. So that's the mindset that we're shifting. There are some good things happening in the market. For instance, look at what iOS 10 has done now, where rather than having the app experience, which has really been very challenging for sort of day-to-day use of the using your smartphone. Now with iOS 10, you have access to the native dialer. That's a very big deal because it makes the UX, kind of look and feel like the native dialer experience. And so that's a very big move. But I think you'll increasingly see more, again, this mobile first or device agnostic view. I always give people a very simple example. It's from my Google days. If I told you were going to have a completely different experience on Gmail based upon whether you queried it from your tablet, your phone, or your computer, you'd look at me like I had two heads. It's a cloud service. Doesn't matter which bucket of bolts, piece of hardware I tend to, access my cloud service from, I'm going to have the same experience. Communications has to be the same thing.
Well, in a way, you're already there for your Vonage customers because you have the app and you have the little sort of phone there. So you're already doing it to an extent for your traditional customers. Okay, let's show appreciation to Alan and to Thomas for an excellent Q&A session. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for making the time, Alan.
Thank you all. Have a great day. Thank you. Thanks a lot.